Have you ever attended a wedding that almost ended with a funeral? If someone had warned us that a simple road trip through the Canadian wilderness would awaken something that had been waiting for years, we would have turned the car around without thinking twice. My name is Dylan Mercer, and everything happened during the winter of 2023. The world had finally returned to normal after months of restrictions, and everyone was trying to enjoy life again. One afternoon, while I was relaxing at my apartment in Halifax, my phone suddenly started ringing. The call was from my childhood friend Caleb Rowan. His voice was full of excitement. "Brother, I am getting married this January, and you have no excuse this time. You and the whole group must reach my hometown at least 1 week before the wedding. There is a lot of work to finish, and I need all of you with me." I laughed and promised him we would never miss such an important day. After ending the call, I immediately contacted our old friends. Within an hour, our group chat became active again. The 6 of us had not met together for a very long time. Everyone started sharing jokes, old memories, and travel plans. The group included me, Owen Sinclair, Jace Holloway, Tristan Vale, Elias Hawthorne, and of course Caleb. Because of work, nobody could leave a full week early. After discussing for several days, we finally decided to leave on the 2nd of January. Caleb understood the situation and agreed. His hometown was located near the remote forests of Cape Breton Highlands, where long winding roads passed through frozen valleys, abandoned cabins, and endless pine trees. The drive itself would take several hours. That made us even more excited. We decided this would not only be a wedding trip, it would also become our first adventure together after many years. Everyone packed warm jackets, sleeping bags, portable cooking equipment, snacks, and enough supplies for the journey. Jace volunteered to drive his large SUV because it had enough space for everyone and all our luggage. Early on the morning of January 2nd, we left Halifax, laughing, singing, and talking about college memories. The roads slowly became quieter. Buildings disappeared. Small towns became rare. Soon nothing surrounded us except endless snow-covered forests. Around sunset, we entered a beautiful mountain highway that crossed the Cape Breton wilderness. Soft snowflakes floated through the air. Cold mist slowly covered the road ahead. Visibility became worse with every passing minute. Nobody was scared. We believed it was just another winter evening, but none of us noticed that from the moment we entered those mountains, something had already begun following our vehicle. The first warning came only a few minutes later, and none of us realized how badly we had already ignored it. The road ahead became quieter with every mile. No other vehicles appeared for a long time. Only the sound of the engine and the freezing wind surrounded us. Jace kept both hands tightly on the steering wheel while Owen played music through the speakers. Everyone was laughing again. The strange feeling from a few minutes earlier slowly disappeared. After almost an hour, Tristan pointed toward a narrow opening beside the highway. A small scenic overlook faced a frozen valley below. The view looked incredible. He smiled and said, "We have been sitting for hours, let's stop here for 10 minutes. Nobody disagreed. Jace parked the SUV beside the road. The cold air hit our faces the moment we stepped outside. Everything around us looked peaceful. Tall pine trees covered the mountains. Fresh snow reflected the fading evening light. Not a single bird could be heard. Elias walked away carrying his camera. Owen stretched his arms while Caleb started recording videos for his future wedding memories. I stayed near the vehicle watching the forest. Something felt wrong. I could not explain why. Then Jace suddenly looked toward the trees. Did anyone hear that? Everyone stopped talking. From somewhere deep inside the forest came the sound of rushing water. It was not loud. It was soft, almost inviting, like a hidden river flowing between the trees. Tristan smiled. There must be a frozen waterfall nearby. Come on, let's check it out. Without thinking, we followed the sound. Fresh snow covered the ground, making every step slow. The strange sound became louder as we walked deeper into the forest. It always seemed just ahead of us. 5 more minutes passed. The sound was now incredibly close, yet there was nothing. No river, no waterfall, no stream. Only silent trees standing in every direction. Nobody spoke. The sound suddenly stopped. Complete silence filled the forest. Then Elias reached into his jacket and pulled out a cigarette pack. He lit one and handed another to Owen. Just as Owen reached for it, another voice quietly whispered, "Save one for me too." Every one of us froze. The voice had come from somewhere behind us. It sounded calm, almost friendly, but it definitely did not belong to anyone standing there. Slowly we turned around. Nothing. Only endless snow. Only dark trees. Nobody else was there. Caleb forced a nervous laugh. "Someone is messing with us. Come out already." No answer came. Instead, an icy wind rushed between the trees. The temperature suddenly dropped so fast that our breath became visible like thick smoke. Jace stepped backward. "We are leaving now." Nobody argued. We walked quickly toward the road. None of us looked behind even once. but while climbing back into the SUV, I felt something watching us from inside the forest, waiting patiently, as if it already knew. We would meet again very soon. Nobody spoke for several minutes after leaving the forest. The music stayed off. Only the sound of the tires rolling across the frozen highway filled the silence. Jace tried to laugh and said it was probably another group hiding in the woods trying to scare tourists. Nobody answered. Deep inside, every one of us knew that voice had been too close, too clear, too real. Around 3 hours later, darkness completely covered the mountains. Snowfall became heavier. The road ahead almost disappeared beneath the white mist. Caleb checked the time and smiled. We still have a few hours before reaching my hometown. Let's stop somewhere and cook dinner. Everyone agreed. We searched along the highway until Owen noticed an old wooden shelter beside the road. It looked abandoned. One side was open while the other 3 sides protected it from the freezing wind. It seemed perfect. We unloaded our cooking equipment and started preparing food. Soon the smell of grilled meat filled the cold air. For the first time since leaving the forest, everyone started laughing again. The strange incident slowly faded from our minds. While we were eating, the weather changed without warning. The wind completely stopped. The snowfall also stopped. Everything became unnaturally silent. Even the fire stopped making its usual cracking sound. I looked around. The forest looked frozen in time. Then a slow voice came from somewhere beyond the darkness. Please save some food for me. I have not eaten in a very long time. The words echoed through the trees. Every one of us stood up instantly. Jace grabbed the flashlight. Its beam moved across the snow. Nothing. No footprints. No person. No animal. Only endless darkness. Then the same voice laughed softly. Much closer this time. Thank you for bringing him to me. Before anyone could react, a powerful gust of freezing wind rushed through the shelter. The fire went out instantly. Our cooking pots crashed onto the ground. Caleb shouted, "Get everything back into the SUV now." Nobody wasted another second. Within moments we packed whatever we could carry and jumped inside the vehicle. Jace started the engine and pressed the accelerator. The SUV sped away from the shelter. As the headlights swept across the empty road, I looked through the side mirror one last time. A tall figure was standing exactly where we had been eating. It never moved. It never waved. It simply watched our vehicle disappear into the darkness. And somehow, I knew, it was no longer staying behind. None of us mentioned what we had seen in the mirror. Maybe because we hoped it had only been our imagination. The SUV continued through the empty highway until the lights of a small town finally appeared in the distance. For the first time in hours, everyone felt relieved. Around midnight, we reached Caleb's hometown. It was a quiet place surrounded by forests, frozen fields, and old wooden houses. Most families had already gone to sleep. Only a few porch lights were still glowing in the darkness. Caleb welcomed us with a tired smile. His parents greeted everyone warmly and showed us a separate guest cottage beside the main house. The place was old but comfortable. There were 6 beds, a fireplace, and a small wooden porch facing the backyard. After such a long journey, nobody had the energy to stay awake. We placed our bags inside, changed into warm clothes, and went straight to bed. I remember closing my eyes only a few seconds after lying down. Morning arrived peacefully. Bright sunlight covered the snow outside. Everything from the previous night felt like a strange dream. Caleb laughed at us during breakfast. "You all look like you survived a war." Everyone laughed with him. Nobody wanted to ruin the happy atmosphere by talking about the voice in the forest. The day passed quickly. Relatives arrived from different cities. Music echoed through the house. Wedding decorations covered every corner. By evening, the engagement celebration had begun. Everyone enjoyed dancing, eating, and taking photographs. Before getting ready, Caleb walked into our room searching for a good cologne. He always liked wearing expensive fragrances. He picked up my favorite bottle from the table. "This one smells incredible. Can I borrow it tonight?" I smiled and handed it to him. "Keep it until the wedding if you want." He sprayed it several times over his clothes and happily walked outside. For a brief moment, the same cold feeling returned. A strange breeze entered the room even though every window was closed. The flame inside the fireplace suddenly bent toward the door, as if someone had quietly entered. Elias noticed it too. Did anyone open the door? Nobody answered, because the door had never moved. Yet all of us felt someone else had just stepped inside with us. The celebration continued late into the night. Music, laughter, and conversations filled every corner of the property. Family members were busy preparing for the wedding while guests enjoyed the cold winter evening. Around 10:30, the older relatives slowly returned to their rooms. The village became quiet again. Only our group remained awake. Jace opened a backpack and pulled out a few drinks. He smiled. "One last boys' night before Caleb becomes a married man." Everyone laughed. Caleb hesitated for a moment. Tomorrow my grandmother will kill me if she finds out. Tristan wrapped an arm around his shoulder. Nobody will know. Just 1 hour behind the barn. Caleb finally agreed. A narrow trail behind his house led toward an old abandoned apple orchard. The orchard had not been used for years. Beyond it stood the remains of a collapsed farmhouse surrounded by broken fences and dead trees. Several villagers had warned children never to play there, but none of us cared. We carried our drinks, snacks, and cigarettes and walked through the snow. The moonlight made everything silver. The old farmhouse looked darker than the forest around it. We chose a large tree near the broken fence and sat together. Stories from college quickly replaced the silence. Everyone was laughing again. For a while it felt like the frightening events on the highway had never happened. Around midnight Caleb stood up. I will be back in a minute. Owen also got up. I am coming too. Both of them walked toward the broken fence. Just beyond it stood the ruined farmhouse. While waiting, Jace tossed the cigarette pack toward Caleb. The pack landed on the other side of the fence, inside the abandoned property. Without thinking, Caleb climbed over. He picked up the cigarettes and stood still. Owen watched him from the fence. At first everything looked normal. Then Caleb slowly turned toward the dark farmhouse. He smiled, as if someone inside had called his name. He began walking forward, very slowly, very calmly, stopping only a few feet from the broken doorway. His lips started moving. He was speaking to someone, but Owen could see only empty darkness. Caleb laughed quietly, then nodded, as though listening carefully to another voice. Owen called his name. No answer. He shouted louder. Still nothing. Finally, Owen climbed over the fence and grabbed Caleb by the shoulder. The moment Caleb turned around, every drop of blood disappeared from Owen's face. Those were not Caleb's eyes anymore. They looked completely black beneath the moonlight. Then Caleb smiled, a smile far too wide for any human face. And a cold, unfamiliar female voice whispered, "You finally brought him back to me." Owen stood frozen in front of Caleb. His hand was still holding Caleb's shoulder, but his entire body had stopped moving. The voice that came from Caleb was impossible. It was not his voice. It was the voice of someone who sounded angry and heartbroken at the same time. Owen stepped back slowly. "Caleb, what are you talking about?" For a few seconds there was complete silence. Then Caleb tilted his head slightly and looked toward the darkness behind him. "You all ignored me before. You heard me. You saw me. But nobody helped me." Owen felt his heartbeat getting faster. He realized Caleb was not talking to him. Someone else was using his voice. Someone standing somewhere nearby. But there was nobody there. Only the abandoned farmhouse. Only the frozen trees. Only darkness. Owen ran back toward the fence and shouted for the others. Jace and Tristan immediately stood up. "What's wrong?" Owen could barely speak. "Something is wrong with Caleb. Come quickly." All of them rushed toward the fence, but nobody had the courage to enter the abandoned property. They called Caleb repeatedly. "Brother, come back. It's late. We have to wake up early tomorrow." At first Caleb did not react. Then slowly he turned toward them. His expression changed completely. The friendly face they knew was gone. A strange anger appeared on his face. He pointed toward the house and said, "He is not leaving. He belongs here now." A cold wind suddenly moved through the orchard. The old farmhouse door slowly opened by itself. Everyone stepped backward. Then Caleb started screaming. But the sound coming from his mouth was not a man's scream. It was a woman's voice. A painful, terrifying scream that echoed across the entire field. Jace grabbed Tristan. "We need to leave now." Nobody argued. They ran back to the guest cottage and locked the door behind them. Only after reaching inside did they realize something horrible. Caleb was still outside. They had left their own friend alone in that darkness. Everyone started panicking. "We cannot leave him there. We have to go back." But nobody moved, because everyone remembered that voice. After several minutes of silence, a loud knock came from the cottage door. Everyone froze. Knock, knock, knock. The sound became stronger. Then a familiar voice came from outside. "Guys, open the door. It's me, Caleb. I am freezing out here." Jace looked at everyone. Nobody spoke, because they all had the same thought. If Caleb was really outside, then who had been standing in the abandoned farmhouse with him a few minutes earlier? The voice knocked again, this time louder. "Open the door. Please. I am alone." Owen slowly moved toward the door. His hand reached for the lock, but before he touched it, a second voice whispered from behind him, "Do not open it." He turned around quickly. Everyone was staring at him. Nobody had spoken. The whisper had come from inside the room, and that was the moment they realized whoever followed them from the forest had never left them alone. Nobody moved after hearing that whisper. The room became completely silent. The only sound was the heavy breathing of 6 terrified friends. The voice outside continued calling Caleb's name. "Guys, please open the door. I don't know what happened. I am scared. But now something felt wrong, because Caleb had never called them like that before. Jace slowly stepped away from the door. Nobody opens anything. Not until we know what is happening. Everyone agreed. They stayed away from the entrance and waited. After a few minutes the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was even more frightening. They expected to hear footsteps leaving, but nothing happened. Around 30 minutes passed. Then suddenly they heard something moving on the wooden roof above them. Slow footsteps, slow and heavy, like someone was walking barefoot across the frozen roof. Everyone looked upward. The cottage had only one floor. There was no reason for anyone to be there. Tristan whispered, "Maybe it's Caleb. Maybe he climbed up there." But before anyone could answer, a voice came from the ceiling, very softly. "You left me alone." The same female voice, the same voice they heard near the farmhouse. Elias covered his ears. "Stop. Please stop." The footsteps continued moving above them. Then they heard a loud crash from the backyard. Jace grabbed a flashlight. They all followed him carefully toward the window. Outside, in the snow they saw footprints. But they were not normal footprints. They were too deep, as if something extremely heavy had been standing there. The footprints started from the forest, moved toward the cottage, and ended directly below their window. Nobody slept that night. At sunrise, Caleb finally returned, but he was walking alone from the direction of the orchard. His clothes were covered in snow. His face looked exhausted. The moment he entered the cottage, everyone surrounded him. "Where were you? What happened last night?" Caleb looked confused. "Last night? What are you talking about?" "I woke up near the old farmhouse this morning. I don't remember anything after going there." Everyone looked at each other. They understood something was wrong. But before they could tell Caleb the truth, his phone started ringing. It was his grandmother. Her voice sounded worried. She asked one question. "Where were you last night?" Caleb looked confused. "I was sleeping." "Why?" A long silence followed. Then his grandmother said, "Because someone was walking around your room all night. Someone who was wearing your clothes." Everyone in the room froze. Caleb slowly looked at his friends. And for the first time, he realized something had been inside the house with them. Something that looked exactly like him. After hearing Caleb's grandmother's words, nobody knew what to say. The room became silent. Caleb looked at everyone with fear in his eyes. He slowly asked, "What exactly happened last night?" Jace looked at the rest of us. We had hidden everything from Caleb until that moment. But now there was no choice. Owen finally told him everything. The voice in the forest, the abandoned farmhouse, the strange woman speaking through him, the footsteps on the roof, and the voice that warned us not to open the door. Caleb listened without saying a word. At first he looked like he did not believe us, but then something changed. His expression became serious, because he remembered something, a dream from the previous night. He told us that while he was standing near the old farmhouse, he saw a woman wearing an old white dress. Her face was covered with dark hair. She was standing beside the broken doorway. She told him that she had been waiting for him for a very long time. Caleb said he felt unable to move. He could hear our voices calling him, but he could not answer. The woman kept repeating one sentence. "You came back to finish what was left incomplete." Everyone became even more terrified, because none of us knew who this woman was. Later that afternoon, Caleb's older brother Mason arrived. He was the only person in the family who knew about the history of that abandoned farmhouse. When he heard what happened, he became extremely serious. He told us something that nobody in the village liked talking about. Around 30 years ago, a young woman named Clara disappeared near that old farmhouse. She had left her home with someone she loved because they wanted to get married, but they never reached their destination. A terrible accident happened near the forest road. Her body was never found. The villagers believed that her spirit remained trapped there. Mason looked at Caleb. "That place has been avoided for years. Your grandmother always warned everyone not to go near it, especially during wedding ceremonies, because old people believe spirits become stronger when someone is about to start a new life." Caleb looked down silently. Then Mason asked one question. "Did you take anything from that place?" Nobody answered. Then Caleb suddenly remembered. The perfume. Everyone looked at him. "What perfume?" Caleb slowly explained. "The night before the wedding celebration, I used Dylan's perfume. The same bottle I was carrying when I went near the farmhouse." Mason immediately became worried. He told us to bring the bottle, but when we searched Caleb's room, the perfume was missing. And that was the moment we realized whoever followed us from the mountains had not chosen Caleb randomly. It had been waiting for him, and now it wanted to complete something that was never finished. The entire house became tense after the perfume disappeared. Nobody wanted to admit what they were thinking, but everyone had the same fear. Something connected to that old farmhouse had followed Caleb back home. Mason immediately called an elderly man from the village who was known for understanding old rituals and unexplained incidents. His name was Father Benedict Hayes. He arrived at the house before sunset. The moment he entered Caleb's room, he stopped near the doorway. He looked around carefully. Then he asked one question: who brought this energy into the house? Nobody replied. Mason explained everything that had happened: the forest road, the abandoned farmhouse, the missing perfume, and Caleb's strange behavior. Father Benedict listened quietly. Then he asked Caleb to sit in the center of the room. He closed his eyes and started praying. For several minutes nothing happened. Everyone waited silently. Then suddenly the candle flames around the room started shaking. The windows began hitting against the walls even though there was no wind outside. Caleb's body suddenly became stiff. His eyes opened, but his expression was completely different. A deep voice came from him. "You cannot take him away from me." Everyone stepped back. Father Benedict remained calm. He asked, "Who are you?" The voice changed. This time it became a woman's voice. "My name was Clara. I waited for him. I lost everything because of that night. Now he will stay with me." Caleb's family started crying. Mason looked shocked. He had heard the old stories before, but he never believed he would witness something like this. Father Benedict asked another question. "Why did you follow them?" The spirit answered, "Because they heard me. They came to my place. They carried the same scent that brought back my memories. And she pointed toward Caleb. He was the easiest one to enter." Everyone looked at Dylan, because they remembered the perfume belonged to him. Father Benedict then looked at Caleb. "You cannot keep holding someone who does not belong to you." The spirit screamed, "He promised me. He will come with me." The room suddenly became freezing cold. Caleb started shaking violently. Then he collapsed onto the floor. Everyone rushed toward him. After a few seconds he opened his eyes, but he looked exhausted. Father Benedict told everyone something serious. "This spirit is not attached to this house. It is attached to the place where everything started. If we want to free Caleb, we must return to that forest. The same place where they first heard the voice. The same place where Clara lost her life." Nobody wanted to go back, but they knew there was no other choice, because the wedding was only a few days away. And if they failed, Caleb might never return to the person he once was. That evening nobody in the house could sleep. The wedding preparations continued outside, but inside everyone was worried about Caleb. He was sitting quietly in his room. He looked normal again, but everyone could see the fear in his eyes. He kept saying the same thing. "I don't remember what happened near the farmhouse, but I know something was there. Something was trying to take control of me." Father Benedict prepared everything needed for the ritual. He told us we had to return to the place where Clara became connected to this world. The abandoned farmhouse near the orchard was only part of the problem. The real connection started somewhere else, at the forest road where we first heard her voice. The next night we left the village. Jace drove the SUV. Father Benedict sat in the front. Caleb sat between Mason and Dylan in the back seat. Another vehicle followed us with the rest of our friends and Caleb's family members. Nobody talked during the journey. The same highway appeared again, the same mountains, the same endless trees. But this time everything felt different. The place that once looked beautiful now felt like a warning. Around midnight we reached the exact area where we had stopped before. The old scenic point near the forest. Everyone stepped out of the vehicles. The cold wind touched our faces. Father Benedict looked toward the trees. He whispered, "She knows we are here." Suddenly the temperature dropped. The fog became thicker. And from deep inside the forest, we heard the same sound again. The sound of flowing water. The sound that had brought us there the first time. Caleb started shaking. "I remember this sound." Father Benedict told everyone to stay behind him. They slowly walked toward the forest. Every step felt heavier. As they reached deeper inside, they found something that made everyone stop. In the snow were fresh footprints, leading toward a small frozen stream. But nobody had walked there before them. Father Benedict looked at Caleb. "This is where her story began. And tonight, this is where it will end." He placed the ritual items on the ground. The moment he started chanting, a strong wind exploded through the trees. Branches moved violently. The frozen stream cracked. Then a woman's voice echoed from everywhere. "You came back. I knew you would." Caleb fell to his knees. Dylan and Mason tried to hold him. But suddenly Caleb looked up. His eyes had changed again. The spirit had returned. And this time, she was not planning to leave quietly. The moment Caleb opened his eyes, everyone stepped backward. His face looked different. The fear and confusion were gone. Only anger remained. The female voice came from his mouth. "You think you can separate us? You are too late." Father Benedict continued his prayers without stopping. The wind around them became stronger. Snow started rising from the ground and moving around like a storm. Mason held onto Caleb while Dylan and Jace stood nearby. Nobody knew what would happen next. The spirit screamed, "He came to my place. He carried my memories. He will stay with me forever." Father Benedict looked directly at Caleb. "This soul is not yours to keep. You are holding on to pain that should have been released years ago." For a few moments everything became silent. Then the spirit showed them what happened decades earlier. Everyone standing there suddenly saw images in their minds. A young woman named Clara walking through the forest with the person she loved. They were running away because their families refused their relationship. They were supposed to start a new life together. But before they could leave the mountains, their vehicle lost control on the dangerous road. The accident took Clara's life. The person she loved survived, but he left the area forever. Clara waited there, believing he would return. Years passed, but nobody came. Her sadness turned into anger, and that anger kept her spirit trapped. Father Benedict understood. You were not waiting for Caleb. You were waiting for the person who never returned. The spirit became silent. For the first time, the anger on Caleb's face disappeared. Father Benedict continued speaking. This young man has his own future, his own family, his own life. You cannot force him to live your unfinished dream. The forest became completely quiet. Then suddenly Caleb screamed. A dark shadow appeared behind him. Everyone saw it clearly. A human-shaped figure standing in the fog, slowly moving away from Caleb. The spirit screamed one final time. "Number, he is mine." The shadow rushed toward the frozen stream. Father Benedict threw sacred items into the fire and continued the ritual. The entire forest shook. The old trees moved violently. Then a bright flash appeared near the stream. When the light disappeared, the shadow was gone. Caleb collapsed into the snow. For several seconds nobody moved. Then he slowly opened his eyes. This time, they were completely normal. Father Benedict looked at everyone and said, "It is finished." But before anyone could celebrate, he looked toward the forest one last time, because standing between the trees, for only a second, was the figure of a woman, and this time, she was smiling peacefully. After returning from Caleb's wedding, everyone tried to move forward with their lives. The incident slowly became a memory that we rarely discussed, not because we forgot, but because some experiences are too difficult to explain to anyone who was not there. Months passed. Dylan went back to his normal routine. Jace returned to work. Owen and Tristan continued their daily lives. Everything seemed peaceful again, but one evening something unexpected happened. I received a message from Caleb. At first I thought he was just checking on everyone, but when I opened the message, my hands became cold. It was a picture of the old forest road where everything started. Under the picture Caleb had written only one sentence. "I think she wanted us to know something." I immediately called him. Caleb answered after a few seconds. His voice sounded nervous. I asked him why he went back there. He said he never went back. Then who took the picture? Neither of us had an answer. Caleb explained that the picture appeared in his phone gallery by itself. The date of the picture was the same day we performed the ritual, but nobody had taken it. I asked him if he felt anything strange. He stayed quiet for a moment. Then he said something that disturbed me. "Last night I had a dream about Clara. I saw her standing near the frozen stream, but she was not angry. She was crying. She kept saying one name, a name that nobody among us recognized. I asked Caleb what the name was. He hesitated. Then he told me. The name was the man she was supposed to marry, the man who disappeared after the accident. For years we believed Clara was trapped because she could not accept her death. But maybe there was another reason. Maybe there was another part of her story that nobody knew. A few days later, all of us friends received another message from Caleb. This time it was a location. The same forest, the same mountain road, and the same place where we first heard that mysterious voice. None of us wanted to return. We remembered everything that happened there, but deep inside, we also knew something was unfinished, because sometimes spirits do not return because they want revenge. Sometimes they return because their story was never completely told. And once again, we found ourselves preparing for a journey into the darkness, a journey that would reveal the final secret hidden inside those mountains. 3 days later we gathered at Jace's house. Nobody was excited this time. The first journey was filled with laughter and wedding celebrations. This journey was completely different. Everyone knew we were returning to the place where we had experienced something impossible. Caleb arrived last. He looked tired but determined. He was carrying an old notebook. When I asked him about it, he said he found it inside his grandmother's room. The notebook belonged to someone from the past, someone who knew about Clara. We opened the notebook carefully. The pages were old and damaged, but one name appeared again and again. Michael. According to the notes, Michael was the person Clara planned to marry. After the accident, everyone believed he abandoned her. But the truth was different. Michael had spent years searching for Clara. He believed she was still alive. He returned to the mountain road many times looking for answers, but one winter night, he disappeared too. Nobody ever found him. Everyone in the village assumed he had left the area, but the notebook contained something strange. The final page had a sentence written only a few days before his disappearance. She is not alone anymore. Someone else is waiting with her. After reading that line, nobody spoke, because we all understood one thing. Maybe Clara was never the only spirit connected to that place. The next morning, we started our journey. The weather was strangely calm. No heavy snow, no strong winds, just a silent road surrounded by endless trees. When we reached the forest area, we parked the car near the same location. The moment Caleb stepped outside, the atmosphere changed. The birds stopped making sounds, the wind disappeared, and the forest became completely still. Father Benedict had given us instructions before leaving. He told us not to call out any names, not to separate from each other, and never follow any voice we heard. We walked slowly toward the frozen stream, the same place where the ritual had happened. Everything looked exactly the same. The trees, the snow, the silence. Then suddenly, we heard footsteps behind us. Everyone turned around together. Nobody was there. But on the snow, fresh footprints were appearing one by one, moving toward us, not away, toward us. Caleb looked terrified, because he recognized those footprints. They were the same footprints he had seen in his dream. And then, a voice came from the forest. A voice that was not Clara. A voice belonging to a man. It whispered, "You finally came back. We have been waiting for you." The moment that voice echoed through the forest, everyone stopped walking. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed for a few seconds. Because this time the voice was different. It was not Clara. It was deeper, older, and filled with a sadness that felt impossible to describe. Caleb looked toward the trees. His face had turned pale. That voice. I know that voice. We all looked at him. Who is it? Caleb slowly opened the old notebook again. His hands were shaking. I think it is Michael, the person Clara was waiting for. Before anyone could answer, the fog around the forest became thicker. The frozen stream started making cracking sounds. Then a figure appeared between the trees, a man wearing an old winter coat. His face was unclear, but he was standing exactly where the voice had come from. Dylan stepped forward. "Who are you?" The figure did not answer immediately. He just looked at Caleb. Then he said, "You brought her back." Everyone became confused. Caleb replied, "Who are you talking about?" The figure slowly pointed toward the forest behind us. Then we heard another voice, "Clara," but this time she was not angry. She sounded afraid. The figure disappeared for a moment, and suddenly the temperature dropped. A strong wind moved through the trees. The snow around us started spinning. Then a shadow appeared near the frozen stream. Two figures were standing there. One was Clara, and the other was the man from the forest. Father Benedict had warned us that some stories are not about one spirit. They are about unfinished promises. And now we finally understood. Clara had not been waiting alone all these years. Someone else had been trapped with her. Someone who wanted the truth to come out. The man looked at Caleb and said, "The accident was not what everyone believed." Before Clara could rest, the truth had to be revealed. Then suddenly a loud crack came from the frozen stream. The ice started breaking, and from beneath the snow, something old and forgotten appeared. A damaged necklace, a piece of clothing, and an object that changed everything we believed about that night. Because the accident that took Clara's life was not an accident at all. Everyone stood frozen near the frozen stream. Nobody expected what we saw beneath the snow. The old necklace, the torn piece of fabric, and a rusted metal box buried deep inside the ice. Caleb carefully picked up the box. It was locked, but after years under the snow the lock was already broken. Inside there were old letters, photographs, and a small diary. The name written on the first page was Michael. Caleb opened the diary with shaking hands. The first few pages described his love story with Clara. They had planned to escape together because their families wanted them to marry different people. They believed the mountains would be the beginning of their new life. But then everything changed. Michael wrote that on the night of the accident they were not alone. Someone had followed them. Someone who wanted to stop them from leaving. The vehicle crash was caused intentionally. Clara died instantly. Michael survived but was badly injured. He tried to reach help, but before he could return, the person responsible attacked him and left him in the forest. Michael spent his final moments near the frozen stream, waiting for someone to find the truth. Everyone became silent after reading those words. For decades the village believed Clara was simply a lost soul trapped by sadness. But the truth was much darker. She was waiting for justice, not revenge. The man who appeared in the forest looked toward Clara. Then he looked at Caleb. The truth has finally been found. Clara looked at Michael, and for the first time, Her face looked peaceful. The anger that had surrounded her for years slowly disappeared. A soft wind moved through the trees. The darkness around the forest started fading. Then Clara looked toward us. Her voice was quiet. "Thank you for bringing our story back." Caleb stepped forward. "I am sorry for everything that happened." Clara smiled gently. "You were never the reason for my pain. You only helped me find my way home." Suddenly the fog began disappearing. The two figures standing near the stream started becoming transparent. Within seconds, both Clara and Michael vanished into the morning light. The forest became completely silent, but this time, the silence felt peaceful. We stood there for several minutes. Nobody said a word, because everyone understood. We had not returned to fight a spirit. We had returned to finish a story that had been waiting for decades.